Dr. Sania Nishtal and her team worked day and night and gave an impressive, all-encompassing and comprehensive Ehsaas strategy, and now it is under revision post-COVID-19. PAS division would like to thank everyone who contributed to this report in one way or the other. I would like to mention OPHRD, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, International Labour Organization, federal and provincial entities and experts, academicians, labor economists, labor unions, and federations. Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas is a very important initiative of Ehsaas strategy. A labor welfare and social protection expert group was formed in May 2019 and tasked to develop a program for workers in the informal economy. The Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas report with 11 recommendations provide a strategic direction for rollout of this initiative. Recently, a core group was formed to make them time-bound. Further, the points raised in this launch will also give clarity from implementation. In the end, thank you everyone for joining this webinar arranged by PAS Division with support of ILO. I would also like to invite everyone to get a copy of the report on our website, pas.gov.pk. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Sajid.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you so much. Let me now directly go to very honorable Senator, the Honorable Dr. Sania Nishtar, Special Advisor on Poverty Alleviation and Social Safety Nets to the Prime Minister. She is also Chairperson of the Benjir Income Support Program. Over to you, Madam Minister, for your opening remarks, please. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much. And I'd like to join Khattak Saab in welcoming you all to this webinar. As you're aware, this initiative of Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas and the expert report that is being launched today is under the Ehsaas framework. Ehsaas is a multidimensional program, and it has several programmatic strands. There are 14 target groups which Ehsaas aims to impact. Destitute families, widows, orphans, the disabled, students who from deserving families who go to primary school. Then there are students at the undergraduate level for which we have programs. Ehsaas programs also target the sick who risk catastrophic health expenditure. There are programs for poor farmers, those who want to earn a livelihood. And within that ecosystem of 14 target groups, there are also programs for the informal sector. Now, within the informal sector, there are 3 particular groups that merit special consideration. Firstly are the daily wage workers and the self-employed and those who earn piece rate remuneration. That's one category. The others are domestic workers, and a very significant segment of those are women who work in urban areas. And then the third subcategory are women in the rural areas whose work is seen as an extension of their household responsibilities. So the informal sector is, of course, very large and diverse, but within this informal sector, there are these 3 particular categories which are particularly vulnerable. And you would have seen that our government has a special emphasis on these subgroups. So the initiative of the Panagas, which the Prime Minister is personally leading, is part of the government's commitment to give these daily wage workers shelter, to give them meals, because they have meager incomes that they have to send back home, and there is a huge crowding out effect on that meager incomes. So the Panaga initiative is one of the initiatives in large urban centers to give them protection and to reduce their vulnerabilities. You will also be aware that a bill centered on the protection of domestic workers is now going to be presented in the Senate. There are many initiatives that are being conceptualized under the leadership of my cabinet colleague, Zulfikar Bukhari, who's just going to speak and let you know the initiatives that are in the pipeline or under the rubric of his ministry. And to give further structure and strategic direction to the Ehsaas related work around the informal sector, some time ago, we decided to constitute an expert group. Now, within the Ehsaas framework, we have this tradition of constituting expert groups to draw on their wisdom and their advice and their expertise. And there are a number of different expert groups for different thematic areas, for different programmatic interventions. We've got an expert group on orphanages. There's an expert group guiding the conditional cash transfer on education. There's another expert group that is guiding the interventions centered on the health and nutrition conditional cash transfer program, and so on and so forth. So this particular expert group was constituted with a specific composition. It was constituted in a tripartite framework. We called it the Labor Expert Group. And there are a number of renowned experts belonging to this discipline who I'm personally grateful to for giving their time and expertise. Now, the Labor Expert Group has met several times, and it has come up with a very cogent report with a set of very strategic recommendations on how to take this work forward in the informal worker stream of Ehsaas. At the outset, they recommend that there should be an institutional arrangement, the Mazdoor ka Ehsaas unit, because without an institutional arrangement, it is very difficult to keep the momentum going. We completely agree with them. They make a very strong recommendation to recognize the work of the informal sector, to register them, and in order to ensure that they get minimum wage, that we should mandate that they should be paid through bank accounts. There are a number of other recommendations centered on the creation of welfare schemes and how to sustainably bring them in the ambit of pensions and other welfare frameworks. I'd rather hear from the experts rather than try and summarize their work. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the expert group for the very important work that they've done, for the time that they've lent to this, for the thought that has gone into it. And I can assure you that your recommendations will be taken very seriously, that myself and Zulfi Bukhari will ensure that these are cascaded into implementation. Ours are the two institutional units within the federal government ecosystem that have the mandate to respond. And together with the Ministry of Industries, we will ensure that the very important recommendations that you have framed in this strategic report will get the attention that they deserve. Thank you once again for being with us today. And over back to you, Dr. Sajid.
Thank you, Madam Minister, for a very brief yet a comprehensive overview of the report and the initiatives that your government is taking and is planning to take. Thank you again for joining us. This brings me to welcome our very honorable Minister for Overseas Pakistanis and Human Resource Development, Sayyid Zulfikar Abbas Bukhari Saab, for his special remarks. Over to you, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Senator Dr. Sania Nishtar Saiba, I thank you for allowing me to be a part of this platform. Dr. Khatib Saab, thank you so much. Khatib Saab, thank you so much for this, and all the other esteemed participants in this. I welcome them all, especially on Labor Day. You have picked one of the best days to release this report. I just wanted to go over a couple of things which I'll just share with you with what our ministry is doing. Just before I do that, I would like to say that the Ehsaas program that Sania Nishta Saiba has really held the torch for is probably one of the best programs that is, or the best program that has come out of this government so far, and which has not only been recognized domestically, but also internationally. So I would like to take this opportunity and thank and congratulate Dr. Sania Nishta and her entire team for working endlessly on a program which is extremely difficult. But even in a difficult situation politically, even the opposition has not even been able to lay a finger on this program. That's how transparent, clean, and effective it's been. So on behalf of the vulnerable people of Pakistan, I would like to thank Dr. Sania and her team. I have two departments primarily that we have been working for in terms of labor and what constitutes for their social welfare. First is EUBI, our employee old age benefits. When our government took over, the pension rate for a pensioner was 5,250 rupees. Within about 18 months, there were lots of property transactions that were in suo moto. We weren't extending out as the way we were. We didn't get people into the paying bracket. We had enforcement laws put in place. And we took that up to 8,500 rupees with a 62% increase in about 18 months. The goal of this government, or at least to get close to that goal, is, inshallah, the vision is that we should be matching the pension with minimum wage, or get as close as possible to it. So far, we've maybe about 440,000 people have benefited up till about March this year from UBI pension. And one thing that we've increased new people into it. About 1.3 million people have been brought into the bracket. About 14,000 organizations have been brought into UBI. So we're trying to clean the act and digitalize it so there's less human interaction, and it just becomes another scheme which is digitally paid, which will reduce a lot of the issues that we have encumbered from the past. Moving forward, like I said, one of the goals is to bring it up to minimum wage, or at least match it, by running it far more efficiently, by improving its all its assets that it has, and unfortunately, which have just been dormant for the last 15 to 16 years, and they're worth trillions. So we're working on those schemes, and we're looking to hopefully by this December go for another increase. I'm hoping, if accounts will allow, to about 10,000, increase the pension to about 10,000 rupees. Along with that, which I've once spoken to Dr. Sania Nishta about, is that the biggest, what I would say, the closest thing to my heart and my baby in this is that I don't want EUBI to just be restricted to the formal sector. We are passing an ordinance which will come into the cabinet perhaps in the next 2 weeks, if not maximum 3. And the ordinance is basically that we want to bring in the informal sector into EUBI. It's a little bit complicated, but we've worked out a mechanism where one would pay their own contribution towards EUBI, and eventually that will catch on across the country, and an employer will have to end up paying for even their informal employment that they have in their homes. So your reri wala, your bhatte wala, your maids, mulazim, drivers, all of them will be in a pension payment scheme. And this also includes in the ordinance for our overseas Pakistani workers. Even they will be allowed to self-contribute towards their pension scheme. Along with the pension scheme, we're going to be releasing a health insurance as well to add more benefits to our employers. So this is for EUBI. For Workers' Welfare Fund, WWF, which basically an industrial establishment contributes about 2% of its annual declared income towards WWF. We are also, although that is going through devolution at the moment, but what we are severely concentrating on is low-cost housing in that. For the first time last month, we launched a 1,500 apartment and houses scheme in Islamabad. All of them are made. So it was the first scheme that was actually done by the government and finished. And instead of renting it to giving it for rent to our laborers, for the first time, we created a policy which gave them ownership. We're thankful for all the private banks that got involved and have allowed this to happen. But we are giving subsidies under Pakistan Prime Minister's Naya Housing Scheme, and we are giving it to laborers on ownership. So across the country, we have now made other provinces adopt this policy so that we stop this practice of giving it on rent. That rent money that the laborer gives should be used towards paying off their mortgage. And I think that is a real game changer in where we want to be. So apart from that, we've done about 15 million rupees worth of disbursements to 74 workers for marriage grants. We give death grants of around 9 million to 1,500 families that have been, 15 families that have had deceased workers. So we give death grants, marriage grants, education. We do free education up to PhD level for workers, children in public and private schooling. Like I said, we have a 600,000 death grant. We have a 200,000 marriage grant. We have Hajj schemes for our workers. And what we're trying to push with the education ministry is better vocational training, which we really feel is extremely important. But unfortunately, HRD is pretty much divided into the education ministry. So we're asking TEFTAs and NAFTEC to play along with us. Lastly, I would just like to thank ILO in particular. They've always been extremely supportive. They've given Pakistan the opportunity to be represented on international platforms and allowed us to learn from a lot of good governance in other countries. However, Pakistan itself has done extremely well with ILO. We have about 36 ILO conventions, which we are part of, including 8 core conventions. And more importantly, we've been one of the pioneers in the Better Work program, which is an extremely important program for ILO and for Pakistan in helping shape a roadmap for our labor in this country. So I would like to sum it up there. So there's more time for an open discussion. Again, I would like to thank Dr. Sania Nishtar and congratulate her on this report for Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas, an extremely powerful program which should be supported by everyone across all platforms and sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for giving us an overview of the work that your ministry is doing, and indeed your plans on pension and bringing particularly informal sector into UBI are very important and very timely. We are once again thankful to you for joining us. With this, we will now move to the second part of the event. That is the panel discussion on the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas report. Discussion is moderated and facilitated by Ms. Ingrid Christensen. She is serving as a country director ILO for Pakistan since 2016. Prior to this, she held positions as a senior specialist on occupational safety and health at the ILO Decent Work Technical Support Team, DWT, for the East and Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and the Regional Office for Asia and Pacific, Bangkok, and at the ILO DWT for South Asia, New Delhi, respectively. She has also officiated as officer in charge for the ILO country office for Bangladesh and for the ILO Lion office in Kabul. For the discussion, we are joined by a very distinguished panel, which includes Dr. Alia Hashmi Khan. She's a retired professor of economics, former director, School of Economics, former Dean Faculty of Social Sciences, Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. She has been a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, a member of the Labour Expert Group under the Ehsaas Social Protection Program, Government of Pakistan, and is currently chair of the National Poverty Estimation Committee, Government of Pakistan. Thank you so much, Dr. Alia Hashmi, for joining. We're also joined by Ms. Alia Shahid. She is serving as a Joint Secretary. Ms. Alia Shahid has led World Bank supported Sindh Education Reform Program in her capacity as a Chief Program Manager of Reform Support Unit. She has also worked for USAID-led education and community mobilization projects in the Sindh. She has recently completed senior managers in government course at Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University. I thank you, Ms. Alia Shahid, joining us for us. We are also joined by Ms. Mariko Uchi. She recently took up the position of Senior Social Protection Specialist for South Asia, based in the ILO Decent Work Technical Support Team in New Delhi. She provides technical advisory services to 7 countries in the sub-region, all the South Asian countries, Afghanistan to Sri Lanka. Before joining the DWT, she served as working conditions and gender specialist of the ILO in Budapest, Hungary, and social protection specialist of ILOT in Moscow, Russia. Prior to joining the ILO, Ms. Mariko worked at the Embassy of Japan in Romania as an economic attaché. Thank you, Ms. Mariko. We are also joined by Mr. Fasih Karim Siddiq. He is currently working on the capacity of Senior Advisor to the Employers Federation of Pakistan. Earlier, he served as Secretary General of EFP from August 2015 to 2020. He is also Executive Director of Global Compact Network Pakistan, a body affiliate with United Nations Global Compact to promote its 10 principles in areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. We extend our thanks to Mr. Fasih. We are also joined by Zahoor Awan. He is currently Chairman, Steering Committee, Pakistan Workers Federation member, governing body of the ILO, and members Executive Council, International Trade Unions Confederation. He possesses a 43-year long trade union experience, starting at an age of 21 and so on. So he has given his age into this experiences actually. Beside national awards, Mr. Awan has the International Rose Prize Award from Denmark Movement International to his credit. Finally, on the panel, we are also joined by Melis U. Govin, Senior Social Protection Economist in the World Bank's Africa region, focuses on safety nets and social insurance. Previously, Melis worked for the Turkish government and was a core member of the health and pension reforms team in Turkey. She is currently leading the key analytical work on extending social protection coverage to the informal sector and development strategic digital tools on the social protection. For the closing remarks, we are joined by Dr. Lubna Shehnaz Umar. Dr. Lubna Shehnaz Umar is an experienced labor economist with over 20 years of working experience in the area of labor market statistics, diagnostics, and assessment in the context of Pakistan. Over the course of her professional career, she has worked with the different government organizations, including the Planning Commission of Pakistan, Ministry of Overseas Pakistanis and Human Resources Development, and provincial labor departments. She has also led several research in collaboration with International Labour Organization. More recently, she has also been the member of the Prime Minister's Labour Expert Group, Mazdoor ka Ehsaas. Dr. Lubna has also been associated with academia, having served as a visiting faculty at Quaid-e-Azam University and NUST, and as also an external examiner at various universities. I thank all of you for joining this panel discussion. But before I hand over the mic to Ms. Ingrid, I'll just quickly go through some housekeeping rules for a panel discussion. So number one, speakers are all encouraged to switch on their cameras, especially when they are speaking, if their network allows to do without any disruptions. For a better understanding, please enable the auto captions on the discussion using CC option on the bottom right of the Zoom window in front of you. That will allow us to live stream the captions. For a better, we also invite questions from our audience and colleagues at the end of or as the session goes. Please feel free to write them in the chat box or on the QA box in the right. Please write the name of the panelist that you want to respond to your questions. We also request our panelists to please keep looking on the chat boxes and keep them open, and they can also live respond, typing their responses in the QA session if they wanted to respond any of the questions. So the session will also be telecasted live on Ehsaas program and SDPI's Facebook page. For those watching us on Facebook Live, please write your questions in the chat there. They will be conveyed to the speakers through our team. The proceedings will be recorded and the video will be posted online. You are welcome to revisit the discussion later and feel free to share it with your network. Thank you so much. With this, I will hand over now the proceedings to the Miss Ingrid. Over to you, Miss Ingrid. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you, and in particular, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Sanya Nishta and also Mr. Zulfikar Bukhari for inviting us to this event here and launching of the report. Thanks very much for the work that we have been also working together, and to you, Mr. Bukhari, thanks very much for the kind words to the ILO. We do appreciate also the cooperation with your ministry and the partners here in Pakistan. Indeed, Pakistan has been an important member of the ILO since 1947. So thanks very much, and we are, as you also very rightly say, we are here on the 1st of May, the International Labour Day, where the world's workers and many other partners come together and take stock of the situation and also look at what is ahead of us, what needs to be promoted, and usually many events takes place. This year, as last year, many of the events are virtual this year due to the COVID. But nonetheless, you can say the COVID also in particular put emphasis on the workers' perspective. There's large impacts on workers, enterprises, jobs, employers and workers, and many other partners, governments, of course, as well. So it's a reminder of how important this whole labor market actually is. I also want to acknowledge the very important launch of the Ehsaas program that took place in March 2019. We are happy to see also the government taking such important steps towards it. We know that it's not something that's done in one night, but really is a lot of work to do, but we are happy to see also that this come along. And when the MKA group was the Labor Welfare and Social Protection Expert Group was established. The ILO, along with also the World Bank and the ADB, provided advice to that group and served in an advisory capacity to that tripartite group, and had many good discussions there. Now the report is out, and I would of course invite you also to look at the report. Before we get into the discussion on the various strategies and work together through deliberations on how social protection or social security, as we also sometimes will say in the context of the labor market, can be extended so that we today know what we often today call the informal sector or rural or if informal economy, that here in Pakistan also includes the rural economy. It is perhaps sometimes important to also define what we actually mean when we say informal employment and informal economy. And I think also my colleague Mariko will share a bit more on that. But according to the ILO, the informal employment includes both informal jobs in the informal sector or rural sector, but also the informal jobs in the formal sector. And sometimes it's maybe as a sort of understood that the formal sector is they are all provided with social security, but that might not be the case. And as Dr. Sanya Nishta very correctly mentioned, the daily wage worker has been a concern also during the COVID-19, and some of these are indeed found in the formal sector. So I think I will start kick off, because we are not as blessed with a lot of time, but we still have enough time for a good discussion, I hope. So I will start up with my colleague, Mrs. Mariko Ochi from the Decent Work Technical Support Team for South Asia. And Mariko, what are the characteristics of the informal economy? And do we only see this in the developing countries? Over to you.
Okay, I have a presentation, actually.
Okay.
And then, by the way, time slot wise, that is it, okay, I'll answer first your question. And then maybe I'll continue my presentation further, because there will be a second question, as I know.
Yeah,
And,
that's
so thank you very much. Could you go to the next slide? I don't have a, well, there is no color somehow appearing. I'm sorry, like on the screen, but actually on the left side, it shows that how many, like informal employment and formal employments are there in a world developing, emerging and developed countries comparison. And actually in a global sense, that 6 out of 10 are informal employment, whereas that in developing countries, close to 9 out of 10 are informal employment. Developed countries, 2 out of 10 informal employment. So, to make your quick answer to your question, then yes, there is a big difference between developing and developed countries. And actually, this right side graph shows a little bit more details, like how the characteristic is there. And then not only about the lower, lower informal employment observed in developed countries and higher informal employment observed in developing countries, but we need to highlight this, see the difference, big difference between the formalization level of agriculture sector, which makes big difference between developed and developing countries. So as you see that in developed countries, most of agricultural sector are formalized, whereas that there is a big gap of formalization in the developing countries. So this is my answer to your question. We can go to next slide, but oh, I'm sorry, now the color is coming up. And we can move to the next slide. And please move a little bit. I have 5 minutes. This was a question which I wanted to ask to Ingrid, like how much time I have. And could you move forward a little bit, because it gives move further. Oops, sorry, it should show. Sorry, go back. I should have controlled the slide by myself, because I wanted to show the statistics in Asia. So maybe you have to go back a little bit. Yes. So, as you see, as you see this, the situation in Asia, if we focus, then the informal employment share is highest in South Asia, which is close to 90%, 87%. This is a statistics actually from the 2016, and then the publication with the ILO publication over 2018, which is actually the only publication issued by the ILO with a very solid comparison, statistical comparison at the global level and global country and the regional level. And then as you see that highest, if you see this color actually of the map, then as you see that the highest informality incident observed in Africa, and then I would say that the Asian region, South Asia in particular, as the second highest in global comparison. Ingrid, can I continue further?
Yeah, you can do that. Because the other question which you are now expecting is also some examples as to where they have successfully formalized, you can say, the informal economy or provided social protection to the informal economy.
Sure. So I'll move to the next
as a 5 minutes sort of in total, maybe 7 minutes, because I know with the slides. Okay.
Okay, could you move to the next slide? Yes, I'm not going into too much details because Ingrid already explained briefly about the difference of the informal workers in informal sector, or informal enterprise, or informal workers in a formal enterprise. And there are three types basically divided in a statistical definition, own account workers and employers in the informal employment if they are running informal sector unit. So they are own account workers, like who are informal. And there are employees who are considered as informal employment in the establishment of a formal sector or formal sector, which Ingrid already explained. Third possibility would be that all contributing family members are considered as informal employed by definition. For example, subsistence farming or domestic workers for own household. There is a difference for the domestic workers working for own household and then for the other household, because if the domestic workers working for the other household, whereas that if they are informal, then they are categorized into the more or less second possibility, like they are not exactly second, but first or second possibilities. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, yes. So about the extension of social protection towards informal workers, I just list up the points, like of consideration, what we need to focus, because we cannot really generalize these informal workers. We need to distinguish the approaches of social protection strategies, depending on the status and the situation. So first point which we need to focus is employment status, whether the person is own account workers or so-called self-employed, or sometimes employers, or they are employee status. So if they are own account workers, then the application of social protection might be in one way. If they are employees, including the seasonal workers, but still they are working under somebody, then application would be different. To be precise, that even for the employees status, I take the example of agriculture workers. Employee status, the seasonal workers, for example, and for those who are regularly working for the yearly basis, for example, there is a difference in terms of application of the social security branches, because for those who are seasonal workers, for example, from a technical point of view, logic point of view, if the national legislation and the national system allows, they are applicable to receive the social protection under employment injury scheme, because employment injury scheme applies from first day of their work. Whereas that they are not, for the seasonal workers, they are most likely not applicable for the maternity insurance, because maternity insurance in many countries require a qualifying period of 10 or 12 months. So because, for the reason of reason to take into the interest of the employer side also. So in this respect, then some of the seasonal workers are can be covered by some part of the social protection branches, and which is less than yearly the workers who are working on yearly basis as an employee. Second point, which I'd like to highlight, is a work arrangement, whether time-based or time-bound or delivery-based or piece-rated, you know, like, which is very common, you know, like in Pakistan context, for example, like brick-kiln workers. So time-based workers receive wages, and then the work arrangement, and then their social protection coverage is supposed to be as an employee. Whereas the piece rate workers, they are not exactly employees of the workers because they are paid by pieces. However, it's possible to cover these piece rate workers or the delivery-based workers, depending on what kind of labor contract or labor contract they have. For example, that even though their pay can be by pieces, by delivering by pieces, but for the duration of work, for example, from 1st March until 31st July, for example, yeah. Then this period
sorry, do you have some examples from that, as also in the context of, I know that we need to move on.
Yes, okay, I'll move to the more examples
thanks very much.
Countries. Yeah, sorry, you know. So you know, like in this way that piece rate workers, you know, like, and the application would be different. And the crucial point is identification of the labor relationship, how the labor contract exists or not, how the labor contract stipulates social protection included or not, and how. Next slide, please. I just go for some example of the social protection towards informal workers, and then I picked up agricultural sector first. And then one of the example is from Ecuador, Peasant Social Insurance Scheme, which is so-called solidarity system. So this scheme covers own account agricultural workers, and they register individually or through the peasant organization. It's like a cooperative. And then scheme financed by their own contribution plus cross subsidization by general insurance scheme. So there is a so-called solidarity system in place, and then subsidized by the general insurance scheme from the contribution of the other contributors from the other sectors in the formal sectors. And then, and this scheme covers 73% of rural workers. So I would say that this is quite a reasonably successful case of extending social protection to the agriculture sector.
Thanks very much. Okay. Thanks very much. Can you maybe wind up with Tunisia then, and then wind up in 1 minute or something?
Okay, then I'll move to the next one, which is domestic workers case. There are several examples I listed up, and then it's quite self-explanatory. So in case of domestic workers case, the most crucial part is how to improve the registration system. And then many countries use the digital devices to improve the registration system. And also which will affect to the improvement of administration also. There are cases of the improvement of the legal provision in Bolivia, and also in case of Uruguay, that it approaches from the changing the contribution options, you know, like giving more contribution or flexible contribution options for the employers. So these are the examples of the two kind of sectors, you know, domestic workers and agricultural sector And I would say, I would wind up that, that most challenging sector would be the agriculture sector. It's a very large sector. I think it's not only the Pakistan, but in globally, it's a very challenging sector because from statistics wise, that it's very difficult to capture the real picture of the agriculture sector, starting from the statistics. But in this, extension of social protection to agriculture sector is crucial to increase the extension of social protection in the informal sector.
Okay, thanks very much, Mariko, for giving us this snapshot into really, you can say, informal economy, and also as to look at some of the examples that are can be looked at when we are sort of moving forward. So with this, I would like to also, Dr. Alia, you were part of the labor protection, labor welfare and social protection group, but you're also part of the National Economic Council. So as a member of National Economic Council, what is, from this perspective, your key recommendation or take on Pakistan's current capacity and vision to expand investment in social protection? And maybe the second question would be, what's the evidence of increased investment in social protection and its linkages to the socioeconomic prosperity and reduced inequality, I think?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And I would like to begin by paying my tribute on International Labour Day, and specifically to the informal economy workers of Pakistan, the street vendors, the hawkers, the home-based workers, the domestic workers, the agricultural workers, the delivery workers, and also the overseas workers for whom there exists no social protection at the moment. All of these workers, groups of workers that I pay tribute to, do not enjoy any kind of social protection cover at the moment, and that is exactly why the labor expert group was formed to look into how social protection and social security, social insurance could be extended to these workers. And it's a difficult task, but as the famous Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu said, that journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I'm very, very happy that that step has been taken with the launch of the report of the labor expert group today. We were awaiting this launch, and I'm also heading the core committee of the MKE Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas group, which has formulated an implementation plan for the 11 recommendations that are present in the report. And before coming to your question about fiscal space, in terms of my being a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, the previous one, I would like to just outline that there are 5 important components of recommendatory measures in the report. The first and the foremost is the development of a labor registry for informal economy workers, which is according to international experience, is the first step that needs to be taken in order to extend social protection to them. And for that, the establishment of the institutional arrangement, the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit as a nodal point is the core requirement. And I'm glad that Senator Dr. Sania Nishtar, who has been a leading light for our labor expert group, has announced today that the government is very seriously on way to establishing the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit under whose umbrella all these activities will take place. So the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit would be mandated to start work on registering the informal economy workers along with other categories of workers who work in informal arrangements. And as Mariko said, it's a huge task, but countries have done it, and we are committed to doing it also. Secondly, the development of social insurance packages relating to health benefits, relating to occupational safety and occupational injury benefits, and of course, relating to old age benefits. It was heartening to hear from this Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on OP and HRD that the EOBI is also going to carry out reforms to include the informal economy workers. And in our implementation plan, we have horizontal linkages with the already existing social security and other related institutions for developing these and modeling these packages. The third is, and most important, and I'll club your question about investments in social protection over here. The government is certainly very committed to invest in expansion of social protection measures to the informal economy. But as you know, we are a highly indebted country. We have a low tax to GDP ratio. We are struggling with tax reforms to increase our tax revenue collection. And obviously with the huge debt servicing burden, the fiscal space for a wholly state-funded program does not exist. So in terms of out-of-the-box solutions and in terms of best global practices, we have recommended a contributory scheme of social insurance packages, and also the creation of a social insurance fund, which is into which will flow in the contributions which the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit, in collaboration with the private sector, with the diaspora community, will mobilize funds for. And you know, with the State Bank's Roshan digital account, a lot of expatriate and diaspora Pakistanis have contributed for the development and economic growth of the country. So we expect that the Pakistani diaspora will also step forward for the welfare of the informal economy workers, for whom even employers at times are not recognized, so that the contribution can be linked with a particular employer. And as you know, the part-time workers have several employers, so to overcome all that. The third component of the recommendations is of a communication strategy through which there will be outreach to the informal economy workers or workers engaged working in the agriculture under informal arrangements as to what kind of social protection benefits have been designed for them, what are the contribution rates, and how will the contributions be mobilized through bringing on board financial institutions like banks, etc. So all this work is going to be centered in the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit. And the fifth and very important, and linking it to what the SAPM on OPHRD was talking about, is the knowledge-based reform of the existing institutions of social protection, and how that can link in with the work going on under the Ehsaas umbrella for social protection of informal economy workers. So for example, Punjab has passed legislation for domestic economy workers. However, the work on reform of say the employee social security institution is also being carried out. Yes, Ingrid, I'm just wrapping
Please
up.
wind up in 1-2 minutes.
Yes, I'm almost done. So what I'm trying to communicate is that we have taken on board all stakeholders, and we in the core group also we had a fresh round of consultations under which we tried to understand more clearly how or what is the vision of the existing social protection institutional system in Pakistan for reaching out to the informal sector workers. So what I want to underline is that this is a joint effort of the provincial, would be a joint effort of the provincial governments with the federal government and of the private sector, the civil society organizations like HomeNet Pakistan, who are working for the home-based workers, and the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit would be the nodal point for making all these connections and working out practical solutions. And I might say that in the knowledge-based reform process, we also intend to study the global practices. And I'm very thankful to Mariko, and I look forward to the International Labour Organization and to the World Bank and to ADB to continue supporting Ehsaas program as we embark on this journey of 1,000 miles. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for giving us a glimpse of what the expert group put recommendations, put in terms of recommendations. May I, before we head to the, you can say the constituents at the labor market, just ask the colleagues from the World Bank and maybe also the ADB, if you are on board, I understand that you are that, to also share your views. I know that so in terms of the bank, Ms. Guven, it could be interesting maybe to hear a bit about also in the COVID context, if the bank has shifted its assistance from targeted approaches that go towards the extremely poor to other excluded groups, such as workers in the informal economy in Pakistan, and how you actually took that on. And maybe you have also, as in not only in Pakistan but elsewhere, some method that have successfully been applied in extending social protection to coverage of the informal economy.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and many thanks for the opportunity to be on this panel. It's really a pleasure to be here representing the World Bank. Before I start, I'll also like to wish a happy International Day for all the hardworking women and men globally, including the informal sector. And I would also like to congratulate the government for the launch of the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas report on this important day. So to answer your question, maybe specifically on Pakistan, Pakistan was able to successfully expand safety nets vertically and horizontally to respond to COVID-19. World Bank support was part of this response to finance emergency cash transfers through the Pandemic Response Effectiveness Project. This involved payments to around 4 million regular BISP beneficiaries. Beyond these 4 million beneficiaries, BISP used the social registry and other registries and databases to expand horizontally to an additional 10.5 million beneficiary families in response to the pandemic. And this 10.5 million was beyond regular safety net beneficiaries and included informal sector workers as well. And this expansion was possible because of government's long and commendable investments in the social registry, national ID, and payment systems overall in the social protection sector. But this expansion also required doubling the annual budget for the federal safety net BISP in a matter of a month. So building on this experience, there was a realization that a mechanism needs to be brought in place where these families involved in informal work and who are not included in the regular safety net are prepared to weather future shocks. So as a result, World Bank's recently approved CRISP project, Crisis Resilient Social Protection, goes beyond supporting the poor families with a dynamic, adaptive social protection system using big data. But the CRISP project also includes support to informal workers. So to answer your question specifically, I would not say our support shifted from targeting the poor, but I would rather say our support expanded to include the informal sectors as a vulnerable group as well. And this is in line with the objectives of the MKE report, as has been discussed. So given the diverse characteristics of the informal sector, as mentioned by Dr. Sania, and also their irregular and relatively low incomes, there is a need to devise new approaches to respond to the needs of the informal sector. Therefore, CRISP project will support an innovative hybrid social protection scheme that blends social assistance with risk mitigation elements to promote savings that the informal sector workers can fall back on in case of shocks. The hybrid scheme CRISP project will support is a contributory savings scheme with matching incentives to promote participation and incentivize savings. The scheme, the hybrid scheme, will allow exiting, graduating BISP beneficiaries to continue to receive support by way of fiscal incentives to promote savings through a digital platform to be created to meet the needs of these workers. The scheme will also allow current BISP beneficiaries to start saving in small proportions as well. Overall, the participants of the scheme would be able to build financial resilience through the hybrid scheme. This point is really important, I think, since the digital platform for the hybrid scheme would be interoperable with the social registry. Overall, the social protection system would be able to support a continuum of social protection for the poor and to the non-poor but vulnerable informal workers. So I think overall, maybe globally, as we all know, social protection played a critical role in responding to COVID-19 globally. But at the same time, the pandemic highlighted some gaps in resilience. And one positive impact of the pandemic has been that it prompted rapid innovations in social protection, particularly in digital delivery systems. Countries also expanded coverage globally to new groups, mainly the informal sector. But this was done in a rapid way and maybe not as organized as it should be, because it had to be done very fast. But overall, the challenges during the pandemic highlighted that two main shifts are needed. First, more universal coverage, including supporting the informal sector workers, as the pandemic further highlighted their vulnerabilities. And they are the backbone of many developing economies, as Alia was alluding to as well. Second, social protection systems that are responsive to shocks, as well as to dynamic economic and demographic forces, are needed. So the Pakistan, the CRISP project.
Can you maybe, Melis, could you wind up in 1-2 minutes, please?
Yes, I will, Ingrid. So the approach that the CRISP project will support in Pakistan, the hybrid scheme, has some examples globally. Colombia has a similar scheme with also some health insurance incentives and matching contributions. Rwanda has a similar scheme. India has a similar scheme. Brazil is considering a similar scheme in response to COVID. So these schemes are organically coming up globally in response to COVID. I would say that I think also at the World Bank, we think that the overall, the universal social protection should be the ultimate goal of all countries. As Alia was mentioning, most developing countries have limited fiscal resources today to finance a universal basic insurance. So a progressive approach to achieving universal social insurance by laying the foundations of a social insurance scheme for the informal sector could be followed. A first step could be to offer these kind of voluntary savings schemes to the informal sector workers to access services and allow them to save, and subsidies and incentives may be needed to reach scale. But these should not demand significant resources from the government budget, and that they should be affordable. And this scheme that could then be potentially scaled up and even to be mandatory and universal when the enabling conditions, including fiscal and administrative structure, are in place. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, and sorry to cut you also, and sorry to cut everybody, but we also obviously have a time limit. So now I will turn to the constituents, you can say the constituents on the labor market, the governments and the employers and workers. So I would turn to Mrs. Alia Shahid from the MOPHRD to also share with us maybe as your efforts also to coordinate. I know that your ministry has been very active also in establishing forum for also as for allowing coordination among the established social security agencies. So what do you see of opportunities to promote such coordinated social security delivery system? And again, I would kindly call upon all also the constituents to respect at least 7 minutes introduction. Thanks very much. Over to you, Mrs. Alia.
Thank you, Ingrid, for providing me this opportunity. And my salam to all the hardworking men and women on this today's Labor Day. Basically, I think the 18th Amendment was a configuration of the roles and responsibility between the Federation and the provinces, and down with we are in the in the history can say that we have now 10 years of working with this 18th Amendment. So we can say with the opportunity and with the advantage of the hindsight that definitely when this amendment was passed, there have been very transitional challenges that both the government met, because there were few responsibilities that the provinces was not very much used to, and there were and also so they had these issues in managing them. And also we see a differential between all the provinces in their labor departments, any other departments, all the responsibilities that were dealt with. Few were good to like sort of take on these responsibilities, few were good. But now we can say that also the Constitution provides us with the institutional mechanism to sort out these differences, and also to see how these coordination could be made. One of The institution is the CCI, you all know, the Council of Common Interest. And I think the one big decision that has been taken when it comes to the social security institution was when it was decided after the consultation and consensus of all the provinces and federation that EOBI would be with the federal government. So that was a big decision. Then even for the WWF, when it comes to the worker welfare funds roles and responsibilities, there is a sort of coordinated efforts are being made and the consultations are underway. And recently we had a meeting, I think last month, and we are finalizing the minutes after consulting with the provinces. And it also, we were looked at in this meeting, it was looked at how the industrial establishment would be sort of taken up by the provinces of the and the federation. And it was also it was also sort of acknowledged that there is a difference between the standalone establishment, industrial establishment, and also between the transnational. So both needs different treatment. So the point is that coordination at the institutional level is there, and we also have seen the difficulties, but have also seen that the provincial governments are now taking up the responsibilities in more sort of coordinated and a more sort of effective way. But one thing, just to give us an example as a case in the point, recently there was a case when it was found, when after the much incident in the coal mine worker, it was found out that most of the, we all know, but it's not found out, but it was sort of again came to forth that most of the mine workers are not insured, and that is and one of the sort of EOBI Act provide for affirmative action for the mines worker because they are eligible for the old age pension at the age of 55. So, but despite this incentive, this only 20 to 22% of the mines are registered. So I also a part of the committee that went to the Quetta and also to Karachi EOBI. We discussed the issue. It was found out that when we went to the Quetta and we had meeting with the provincial government as well as with the EOBI regional team and also with the Mine Worker Association, it was found out that it's more of a issue of coordination, as you are pointing out, and the only way to move on it, I think, many of the is to have more coordinated efforts. This is one thing which I suggested at another forum also, that we now need to move toward more formalized, coordinated forums, and many are there underway. I think the social security forum at the provincial level across the province and the federal is doing really good. I was also part of the IOLO European exported intervention where the sensitization exercises seminars were done at 8 or 7 in Karachi and same across other parts of the country also. So my point would be to like have more efforts in having this coordination deepen and broaden. And one more interesting thing which we decided in Quetta meeting, when we had meeting with the Mines and Mineral Department in Balochistan government, it was decided, well, we are taking Much as a pilot project because in Much there are around 52 coal mines, out of which only 22, 25 are registered. So it was decided that let's take Much as the pilot project, where EOBI regional team as well as the provincial team would provincial department team would work together, and also the Mines Worker Association would be also part of that particular sort of intervention, and we will like to know where are the real difficulties we would be facing. So we have started on this journey, and I think again the coordination with the provincial government, because we need to understand that EOBI is limited. Although they are supposed that the organization are supposed to register themselves, but they have limited capacity in persuading them, and they don't have it. They have suo moto, but it's not effective. They don't have the team to ensure it. So I think the provincial governments have the teeth, the departments have the teeth, the EOBI is willing, they have the resources that we can move forward in this direction in having more collaboration.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks very much also for sharing your insights in and the development on the mine workers and provision of them, the provision of social security benefits for them. Many of them are perhaps in the formal sector, but an example of that they are not as extended. The benefits are not extended throughout as the formal sector. So with this, I would like to also move over to the social partners, let me start with also you, Brother Sahur, and wishing you again a happy International Labor Day. So can I ask you about how does the workers look at the recommendations that for extending social security to workers in the informal economy? And can you give some specific examples of the role of your organization, Pakistan Workers Federation, and other workers' organizations that they have played or could play in supporting the extension of the coverage? So that's the first one, and the second question would be about what are the specific capacity needs that workers' organizations need to get to actually be effective in their role. So again, I would like to also ask you to limit your sort of interventions to about 7 minutes. Over to you, Brother Sahur.
Thank you, Sister Ingrid. Do you hear me? Okay. Me?
Yes, I hear you perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to all, and thanks to Sania Nishtar Saiba or Zulfikar Bukhari Saab, they if still are here, and to all the previous panel discussant, and your particular question when it comes, I was part, and Pakistan Worker Federation was part of the labor expert group. And we had prepared a very comprehensive paper at that time in the presence of Sania Nishtar Saiba. It was presented. And when it was covered, Pakistan Worker Federation role was very important on behalf of other organizations also. And we covered almost all the sector in which we gave our recommendation regarding how best the social protection, social security and EOBI that can be extended to the agriculture worker, construction workers, transport workers, domestic workers, brick-kiln, hawkers, home-based, supply chain, even on the mines, which just was mentioned by by Alia Shahid Saiba. In fact, what we feel is this, that although program itself is now after 2 years, although recommendations were there, but like Dr. Alia, it was mentioned that something is better than if it is not done, nothing else. And that is why what we hopeful are that at least Prime Minister recommendation, what I came to know, this report has been approved, and that is a very good signing to us. And moreover, I particularly praise the role of Sania Nishtar Saiba. Definitely we need that she has a will, and therefore we hope that she will do utmost on the system, on the things which are already introduced. The only thing is this, that what I feel is, and what our paper and what workers, what we feel is, informal sector, even formal sector within the informal sector, which were previously reported by previous speakers. We have to see that beside these different sectors, almost all the workers, those they are put it at informal. But even in the formal sector, sometime like, for instance, 2 big 5-star hotel in Islamabad, I don't want to name. One hotel has 3,000 workers, but out of which less than 300 are permanent. So rest 2,700 are forced into informal because they are not covered under social protection law and other law because they are under contract. Therefore, the similar situation like one very 5-star hospital, they have around 2,800 workers, out of which less than 200 workers, those they are just on permanent nature, although all of them are on permanent nature of job. One Karachi Electricity Supply Corporation, sorry to name it because it should be known, that they have around 14,000 workers, out of which 3,000 or maybe maximum 4,000 are permanent workers. Rest are put 11,000 around or 10,000 around from third party contract, even not second party, third party contract, subcontract, although they are performing their duties illegally on the permanent nature of the job work. So here we see that what would happen to those also informal sector a lot, to even those in the formal sector, but compulsory made as informal sector. Second thing is, we have to see, like much was, and moreover, Dr. Alia has mentioned, and she pointed out, who will be the contribution? Contribution in this sense, because employers only contributed to these two social security funds. One is EOBI, one is workers, one is EOBI, one is social security, which is from the provinces, and then rest, government is contributing, neither any provincial government nor any federal government, almost negligible payment if they may have, but they don't pay. So that is one of the major reasons. Who are going to build the care? Who will pay for informal workers? If there are contract worker, we are going to cover it. Permanent worker will get the contribution from the employer, but the other side of it, who will pay for those contract worker if we are making them to accessibility to social protection law? So law is applicable on them, but who will pay? Who will pay? Who contribution by whom? That would also be a discrimination if it will be discriminatory, although they are in the term of a very poverty and slavery wages already they are getting, and we tell them you contribute to do social protection schemes, and on the other hand, you are informal worker, contract worker, and then on the other hand, permanent worker, though their contribution is paid by employer. This would be very much high discrimination. Although our program, Mazdoor Ehsaas program, is very good, very initiative. I appreciate it, at least mean that it was started even 2 years back. We want to go ahead with it, but then we have to realize that what would happen. Will it be any practical terms that it would come? Because I don't think that any domestic employer will pay for the domestic worker. Any mine owner will pay more for their contract workers. Any other, those they are putting them in the third party contract, like I gave you the example. So who will pay? Nothing will be paid. But from here, the responsibility, it comes that of the government. It comes multilateral organization, that of the World Bank, Asian Development Bank. We appreciate there already some of the services which they have mentioned it. So there should come a giant effort in terms of that, how contribution it should come, how workers, those they are, and that is the reason. Like for instance, law itself, Pakistani labor laws on social protection, let I praise, they are very good laws on EOBI, very good law on social security in the South Asian region. We are proud of it. But the only thing it comes there, how there could come a proper implementation of it. Even domestic worker is covered by the social security. Social security law itself is applicable even on one worker. EOBI on 5 workers. But if we see, I mean, that present data within the EOBI pension scheme is just 3 million active members. This is maximum what we are reported. But on the other hand, it should have been 13 million because it covers 5 workers and above. So therefore, 13 million workers, 3 million workers, this is our own worker statistics. So these are the things which we have to see it in terms of forthcoming this launch of the program.
You, Brother Sahul, can you wind up in 1 minute or something, please?
Okay. So therefore, I think our feeling is this, that already our paper is there. We also prepared a COVID paper. Dr. Alia has also good contribution in it on behalf of workers. And so therefore, in which also we had made certain of the suggestion regarding this social protection to workers, those they are now vulnerable because of COVID. And last thing is this, we still hope, usually Sania Nishtar Saiba, I think she is present here, but in your non-presence, Dr. Alia knows in many of the forum, I praised a lot. We do hope, we have fervently hope from this leadership, man leadership on this program, that you will do your level best, and our services are available, worker services and employer even. Both we are going very much in coordination with each other. Employer Federation of Pakistan and Pakistan Worker Federation. We are going very much coordination with each other. So both and our efforts, I think, under your leadership and Prime Minister would go to crown with success in the time to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Sahuan. You raised a couple of issues also very important about the financing, for instance, as how is that actually? I think that is a question that many countries are working on. So without any delay, I would like to move to you, Mr. Fazil Karim Siddiqui, and I would like to also ask you about what support partnerships could be fostered. How is the role you would see of the private sector to lead on driving social security extension to the informal economy? And I would also like to hear a bit about what do you see in terms of capacity needs of employers' organizations and in that sense. So over to you and max, I would say 6-7 minutes because we are heading towards the end of this year. So over to you, Mr. Karim Siddiqui. Unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself, please. You need to unmute yourself.
Am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good afternoon to everybody. And thank you, Ingrid, for this opportunity. Without any preface to what has been discussed, of course, this is a red letter day from the viewpoint of the informal workers that the Ehsaas program has been launched today, and this shows a very positive sign towards some concrete action that is going to follow. The Special Assistant to the Prime Minister just mentioned that there is an ordinance in the way for extending EOBI to vulnerable sectors. I think what needs to be done is very simple, 3-step. The very Ehsaas program, Mazdoor Ehsaas program, can be turned into an ordinance or an act. Pakistan is a signatory to the 8 core labor standards, and by virtue of its signatory to the international conventions, the federal government is empowered to make laws which ensures fundamental rights to workers or a particular segment of workers, and there can be a federal law on this subject. So a federal act or ordinance under the Mazdoor Ehsaas program can provide the broad features of what has been discussed in the export program. Number one, the informal sector to start with should cover the self-employed, the agricultural workers, the domestic workers, and the bricklaying workers. Let us try to develop a model in these areas. Then, by application of law, all labor laws we should make applicable to them as far as they are possible. It is important to do that. In the province of Sindh, the Industrial Relations Act has been applied to the agricultural sector. That gave the Employers Federation of Pakistan the latitude to form small landlords association, agricultural association in Mirpur Khas and Shahzadpur and Daldu. We have found 5 small landlords employers association, and their unions have been formed, and now they are entering into some sort of collective bargaining whereby they are agreeing. We have also imparted them training in farm productivity, and there is now going to be an agreement among the agricultural workers and the small landlords that whatever productivity improvement can be brought in the production of their cotton crop next season, the provision, the proceeds will be spent on providing social protection to the farmers. Now, these are small little islands of initiatives which are being taken, which can make a lot of difference in ensuring that in spite of our issues, we can make things possible. What I was trying to say then is we should be able to address these three sectors. Then the social security at this point provides 10 benefits. Some of them are overlapping. EFP, the EOBI is also providing the same benefit as the social security. Let there be a demarcation. Let social security continue to provide benefits to the formal sector, and the benefits under the EOBI in terms of gratuity, survivor's pension should be given only to the informal sector. And if the informal sector is provided only three benefits: medical care, very important, the what you call employment insurance, like the old age insurance, and the injury benefit. If you provide these three benefits, social security at this moment is being run on a contribution of 1,000 rupees, 6% of minimum wage. Let us not get into the discussion of what should be the rate of contribution. You can fix half of that rate, 500 rupees per person paid by self-employed, can provide them these three protections. Small landlords can get their farmers protected by paying 500 rupees per month and get these three benefits. A domestic worker employer can get their workers insured by making this a small payment. And let them be given some incentive in terms of income tax advantage for the expenses they meet on social protection. Small little measures need to be initially taken in order to ensure that what we are saying on paper does see the light of the day and we start acting in some concrete terms. The next important thing is, based on certain countries' experiences, which were just shared, the Ecuador experience and others, it is something very appropriate to introduce a peasants' health insurance program on the pattern on which the insurance program has been introduced in KP very recently. So if we can introduce such programs which can be supported by funding by the institution, if Social Security, UBI, Workers' Welfare Fund can spare 20% of their earning for the informal sector, these expenses can be met. We need to work with a concrete program and a will to do them. Things are possible. We need to go for informal sector transformation into formal sector. It's a long process. It will take time. But I think employers and workers and their federations are committed to support the government in the initiatives that we are going to take. And we are certainly going to support every possible.
Thanks very much. Can you maybe wind up in 1 minute or something, please?
Again, I'm already closing my discussion by saying actions need to be taken first instead of just things on record. It has taken 1.5 years to bring the report to the public. I think it should not take so much of time now in implementing them and making them a reality. Thank you very much.
Please unmute yourself, Ms. Ingrid.
So thanks very much, and I can see time is running very, very fast, but you mentioned, Mr. Fazioul, some also concrete steps. I am informed that you, Dr. Sania, would like to intervene. I'm not, do you want it right now after where we are sort of through with the speakers, or would you like it at the very end? If you could give me an indication of that.
So I'd like to make a few points.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, okay. Over to you then, please. Would like to do it now, or you would like to do it at the very end? I didn't catch that.
At the very end, please.
Okay, perfect. So then I can see there are some comments in the chat box, but I can also see that we are running a bit short of time. So maybe if we take sort of the two, maybe as one or two questions, but they are addressed to specific units. So maybe if I would encourage then the partners to look at that, and maybe during the closing ceremony, the closing remarks, you could maybe fill in or respond to that. I think that might be the best one to take that forward. So then I would take the liberty of giving it to Dr. Lubna, who also participated in the group, the expert group, and provided her inputs based on all her valuable experience. So I would kindly ask you to also come with some concluding remarks based on this very diverse discussion.
Thank you, Ingrid. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. I'm thankful to Past Division for inviting me for the concluding remarks on the launch of Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas report prepared by the Labour Expert Group. We are delighted to have the presence of the Special Assistants to Prime Minister on Poverty Alleviation and Social Protection, Senator Dr. Sania Nishtar, and Special Assistant to Prime Minister on Overseas Pakistanis and Human Resource Development, Syed Zulfikar Abbas Bukhari, along with the distinguished panelists. I would first of all like to extend my sincere appreciation and acknowledgement towards the broad range of stakeholders who actively participated and gave valuable inputs into the preparation of the MKE program. This includes federal and provincial social security institutions, labor departments, employers and worker organizations, Pakistan Bureau of Statistics, legal experts, NADRA, worker welfare boards, financial institutions, banks, insurance companies, civil society organizations, brick kiln union workers, and academia. It would have not been possible to devise our recommendation without the help and support of all these stakeholders. The group received detailed presentation on the existing mechanism of social security and protection system available for the formal, informal economy worker in the country. Discussion on legal issues with regards to registration of informal economy worker were also held in detail among the LAG members. From the outset of the consultative process, Dr. Sania Nishtar's encouragement of LAG members to think out of the box solution for extending social protection coverage to the informal economy worker played a pivotal role in framing the subsequent recommendation. Her emphasis on devising practical and doable solutions for addressing this issue gave much needed focus to the LAG's deliberation. Her keen interest in the work of LAG was evident from the fact that despite her busy schedule, she spared time to attend almost all meetings of the LAG. Dr. Alia Khan's wisdom, understanding, depth of knowledge on the subject, continuous follow-up, and above all, her passion to work for the welfare of informal economy worker of Pakistan made this work possible. I remember over the last 20 years, Dr. Alia has always been striving for bringing the unprotected informal economy worker on the policy discourse and agenda. Dr. Alia's effort to listen and keep all members focused made this huge and challenging task possible. The support extended by the ILO is also highly acknowledged. The real challenge for the group member are centered on addressing the issue of unprotected worker segment working in informal economy. In the presence of limited fiscal space and without putting any additional burden on existing federal and provincial institutions engaged in their delivery of social security to the workers. This was also compounded by the fact that the large majority of micro, small, and medium businesses in country are not well documented. The self-employed constitute a large share of the informal economy worker, who have no employer to make contribution on their behalf. Therefore, there was a need to think of a social protection solution which was contributory in nature, but affordable and reachable for informal economy workers by using existing targeting and delivery mechanisms. The whole process was tripartite in nature. After comprehensive analysis of consultative inputs, review of global good practices, and analysis of academia on quantum of uncovered workers using latest available labor force survey data, LAG members were able to devise a set of actionable recommendations for providing a minimum social protection flow to unprotected workers. It was felt that all workers in the informal economy need to have unique identity linked to a digital payment account to ensure access to a range of social protection. Once this system is in place, it will also provide complete database of the informal economy worker. The need for development of a comprehensive database and a live registry of informal economy worker as recommended by the LAG seems all the more relevant and urgent in view of the ongoing COVID pandemic. Such a registry can be effectively utilized by the government for providing targeted support to workers in more vulnerable forms of employment in emergency situations in the future. With the launch of this report, it is expected that implementation of the recommendation of the LAG will get underway. It is heartening to note that both PAS and OPHRD have already initiated steps to implement the recommendation of LAG as informed by the SAPMS on poverty alleviation and OPHRD earlier. Effective implementation of the group's recommendation would start with the establishment of the Mazdoor Ka Ehsaas unit to operationalize provision of social protection to the informal economy workers. The MKE unit would embark on developing a registry of informal workers and a set of affordable packages for health services, occupational injury compensation, and old age benefits for workers working in the informal economy in consultation with relevant stakeholders. As informal economy workers presently have limited recognition in the existing legal and regulatory framework, the provincial government needs to take steps to consolidate and simplify labor laws and broaden their coverage to also encompass informal sector workers. At the end, I would like to thank Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiative for providing active stewardship and past division for providing sectorial support to steer the whole process. Active participation of the Ministry of OPHRD in the design of program is also appreciable. The SAPM for Overseas Pakistani also provided his guidance to the LAG by participating in the discussion. The sincere efforts of Mr. Shahid Naeem, Chief Ministry of Planning and Development during the course of the deliberation are much appreciated. Thank you very much, Ingrid and all the panelists.
Thanks very much. And before I just give the floor back to Dr. Sanya Nishta, I would also from my side like to say thanks very much to the PASH division and the MOPHRD and also for their co-leadership in the group, the expert group, and thanks to all the speakers here in the panel discussion. I know we have not given due time to you all, but thanks very much to that. And thanks to all the participants and last but not least, of course, also thanks very much to those that are sort of behind the scene, also the SDPI who teamed up with us and together with the PASH division to organize this here technically. Over to you, Dr. Sanya Nishta, and again, thanks very, very much for this event here and for all the support I know you also provided and during the discussions a couple of years ago.
Well, thank you, Ingrid. And first of all, I must apologize because I'm quite technically late, so I'm unable to get the camera to work. So I don't, you probably just see my name up on the screen. My apologies. It was basically Mr. Zahoor Awan's comments which prompted me to ask for the floor again, because he made such profound points about existing laws not being implemented. I mean, the example that he's given of hotels and hospitals and an electricity distribution company hiring 3 times the number of formal employees through informal contractual arrangements speaks volumes about the challenge that we are faced with. So it is not that the laws are grossly deficient. We've got some legal frameworks in place, but when employers find ways of circumventing procedures and regulators basically look the other way or are complicit and in cahoots, what do you do? And I thought he made such a profound point that I wanted to come again and reiterate its importance, because the people that we're talking about, the people in the informal sector, are vulnerable people. They're poor and vulnerable people who are voiceless, who are nameless, who are faceless, who don't have clout, who cannot reach out to the media, who don't have access to the corridors of power. And when we are actually confronted with these blatant mechanisms of not according due attention to their rights, it's a failure of implementation of the law. So I just wanted to make that point. Secondly, I just wanted to quickly revert back to some of the comments that were made about there being no social protection. Well, I have to assure you that the families that we protect under Ehsaas Kafalat, our unconditional cash transfer scheme, are essentially, most of them belong to the informal sector. During my opening comments, I didn't talk about COVID, but during COVID, the 15 million families that were supported and the $1.25 billion that were disbursed basically averted a major humanitarian catastrophe in the country. It saved Pakistan from the brink of civil war. I recall 2 weeks into the lockdown back in March 2020, my colleagues would call me and say, please do something quickly, because we have filled our cars up with rations and are going out to help all the people who are stranded in major cities. But we're attacked because there's so many people out on the street with no wages, with no work. They're stranded in cities. They cannot go back to their villages because intercity and inter-district transport is suspended. There are no daily wages. They are just sitting out there. And when an NGO, when individuals try to help them, they're attacked because there were so many hungry people out on the street. So it was then that the government launched Ehsaas Emergency Cash, and the execution was totally through digital means. The execution of Ehsaas Emergency Cash was possible because we had invested in infrastructure over the previous 12 months. The data analytics that was used was developed for the first time, and I'm sure that you would all recall that we had cleaned up Pakistan's social protection lists in December 2019, exiting 820,000 individuals who owned cars, who owned lands, who were taxpayers in the government's tax-paying database. There were government servants and their spouses taking benefits. There were grade 17s and 18s and 19s and 20s who were taking benefits. So the mechanism that was developed to clean the lists was the data analytics mechanism that was brought into play to identify. That's number one. Secondly, the incoming SMS request seeking gateways that were utilized were developed in 2019. And the payment system, the fully biometric payment system, where we brought on board 2 commercial banks, was actually the procurement of those 2 commercial banks was done in 2019. So, so we basically pulled a thread through these 3 things, and we constructed a system to deliver emergency cash to 15 million families. The success of that was that nobody complained that it was politically motivated and that the government was trying to help its cronies. And the success of it was evidenced by the fact that it was totally rule-based. And in the end, Sindh, the province of Sindh, which is where an opposing political party ruled, ended up getting the majority of the benefits, presumably because Karachi is a very large urban megapolis where a lot of workers were stranded. So, so I would not say that we do not have social protection for the informal workers. Yes, we do not have social security for the informal workers, and that's part of the challenge. That is part of what we are working on. And my colleague explained the challenges and the initial steps that are being taken with that in view. I also want to share that it's not as if we do not have any data. We have been working for the last 2 years, updating Pakistan's National Socioeconomic Registry. Work is 84% complete. We are due to completion in June 2020, end of June 2021. And we will have some data about employment. It will not be a perfect labor registry because it was not meant to be a labor registry. It was meant to be a repository of socioeconomic registry, and but we will have some employment related details in that. And thirdly, we are trying our level best to show how different pockets of vulnerable groups can be protected. I invite all of you to go to G11 Markaz, where we have tried to install a pilot to give street hawkers rights and licenses and to protect them from the predatory behaviors that loom large, because these informal workers sit in front of shops who extract rents, and then the field level regulators on the ground also extract rents. So the government is trying to give protection to this very vulnerable group. The government is trying its utmost to develop a system and structures and frameworks to promote street hawking on the one hand, predicated on the understanding that it creates livelihoods. And that segment of the economy it has an anti-poverty alleviating effect. But on the other hand, we're also trying to do it in a way that protects them from the predatory behaviors that loom large. So a very small pilot has been put in place, and we're trying to learn from that and to develop the frameworks to scale it up. So I just wanted to quickly, in summarizing what I said, number one, yes, there are challenges, but there are laws which are not being implemented properly. That's our first challenge. Secondly, there is some level of social protection for the informal sector, but yes, we are lagging behind when it comes to social security. And we're striving to put something in place. Thirdly, that we do not have a perfect registry, but there is some data collation currently underway as part of the National Socioeconomic, the Ehsaas National Socioeconomic Database. And number four, that we are putting in place also pilots to scale up. In the end, I want to say that the Prime Minister is personally leading this. His level of attention to the plight of the disadvantaged, to those who are in the informal sector, to their vulnerabilities, is totally unprecedented. I have not seen a head of state accord the kind of attention to the informal sector that he has. His personal leading of the creation of the panagas, his insistence that we should open soup kitchens all over the country, his personally leading, putting meals on wheels for the benefit of the informal sector, I think is truly remarkable. And these are different aspects of the policy interventions that need to be in place to give protection to the informal sector. the report of the labor expert group is a very valuable report for us because it will help us to push the needle forward on many evidence-based interventions. And I'm thankful to the employers' representatives, the workers' representatives, the government representatives, and the experts who lent it time. I want to thank ILO in particular for lending us support in a variety of different ways, and particularly this webinar. Thank you STPI for the event management, and thank you Khatak Saab at the ministry for bringing this all together. So this is not, so the publication of the report is not bringing something to fruition. For a policymaker, the publication of evidence in the shape of a report is the beginning of the work. So that is how I will see it. There is a long road ahead. You already know that in Khatak Saab's department, there is work underway to recast the mandate of the Labor Expert Working Group, because the Labor Expert Working Group is now, your initial terms of reference were to frame the report. Now that that has been done, the second terms of reference that we hope you're going to accept will center on shepherding the implementation. And I hope that you will give it time, energy, attention, and passion as you have given to the report. Thanks a million, Ingrid, for your wonderful moderation. And I'm going to take lessons on how to keep people on time and track. You did a brilliant job. And look forward to connecting back with you on this and many other points. Thank you, and over back to you.
Thanks very much. No, I think that it was not so wonderful, but we have some wonderful people here in Pakistan that also have a lot to share, and I think that is to be cherished. So thanks very much, Sanya, and I wish you
Ingrid,
and
if I may intervene, please. Sorry for interrupting. Can you request the panelists to turn on their camera so we can take a group photograph before you wrap up?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. So everybody.
I'm unable to do that. You can put my picture in instead.
We will do that. We will do that. With the new technology of photoshopping, we can do that. No problem. Okay. So who's taking the picture?
Omar, please take a picture.
Done.
Okay. So thanks very much, and wish you all a continued Eid Mubarak, and also when it comes to the Ramadan Mubarak, and then when you come to Eid, that you will have a good Eid Mubarak as well. Also recognizing that is indeed very difficult time, and it may not be quite as you would have liked to it, but hopefully within not so long time we will see better times. So stay safe also, and take care of you and your family, your colleagues, and everybody. So bye bye.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
It's bye bye. Thank you.